Thank you very much for coming on the Security Space podcast.
Pleasure.
Today, what we will be discussing is mobile application security, the who, the what, the where, the why. But yeah, before we get into it, are you okay just to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so Adam Hawthorne. I'm currently acting VP of Sales at a company called Build 38. I've been in the industry now. I was working out since 2010. I started fresh-faced in a grad program at NCC Group here in Manchester, actually, as a business development or inside sales lead, and then gradually progressed through the ranks as an account exec, and then eventually started building sales teams a couple of years ago for a company called Digital AI, and then took that experience really into what we're doing today at Build 38, wearing a number of different hats, in addition to kind of building my own consultancy business as well with a partner out in Lithuania. So we'll talk more about that. Purely in the mobile application space, so that's where we're particularly passionate about helping organisations.
Well, that's it then. So you've obviously spotted something there in the market with mobile application security, and the reason we're doing the pod today is because, yes, everybody knows about AppSec. It's a very key pillar of the security industry, but what a lot of people don't, I think they know of it, but they don't give it the appreciation it deserves, is mobile application security. So what is it? Is it a niche within a niche? Talk to me. What is mobile AppSec?
Yeah, I think you talk about application security, it's a really broad topic, and more often than not, when you go and speak to like a big enterprise, they're very familiar with your enterprise applications, your web applications. Mobile was not necessarily the predominant platform 2-3 years ago, and you saw like a massive transformation from pandemic where people weren't going into, let's talk about banking, people weren't going into branches anymore. In fact, branches were closing. And fewer people were banking online. More people were accepting that the device was perceived to be a secure environment, biometrics being introduced and things like this. So just a massive transition in how we as consumers interact with services through this new platform, mobile, or newish platform, mobile. And so it's helping organisations, large enterprise, really understand the challenges that don't necessarily transfer directly from like your web application type attacks to mobile. So that's the bit that we're particularly passionate about, trying to help organisations understand and solve some of those complex challenges. That makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But I'm just a bit like, how can we as a society be still so naive in 2024? Because like we said, we know that mobiles, they've been, I might show my age here a little bit, but I remember as a kid like having Nokias and that, but still I'd say from maybe the likes of 2008, 2009, 2010, like phones have been glued to myself, they've been glued to all my friends, everybody that I know. Why in 2024 are we still not aware of mobile application security risks? Why is it still this bubbling feature that's not that big yet?
I think I think there's a number of reasons. If you look at the complexity around developing a mobile application, it's perceived to be quite simple, right? I think if you look at like take a bank as an example, the investment historically into mobile was very small. The teams were generally very small. I've seen massive transformation in some of these banks now, where actually the mobile application is the shop front for that brand. I was working with one particular bank, and they were seeing 90% of their customer interaction via the mobile application alone. So then the perception has been, well, it's quite an easy, simple process and mobile's not as complex, but actually some of these apps are connecting to like 450 different back-end services. This tiny shop window that we see on the device actually is incredibly complex around the back end, and that's the bit that I think now organisations are starting to recognise, actually this is a challenge that we've not yet solved. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why. It's also perceived that you're using a device which is secured, and that's just not the case. Like I was speaking to someone earlier, actually, they said 30% of all mobile traffic is perceived to be fraudulent. 30%.
Yeah.
So a third of the traffic that hits these back ends should be treated as untrusted. Like that's great. How do you manage that?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting space.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about it from my own world, just for this question, is people that are skilled in application security, enterprise level.
Yeah.
Is it a simple brother-sister relationship, and would their skill set be well versed in mobile AppSec, or is mobile AppSec quite different? Are the security protocols different? Are the tech stacks different, or is it the same? What's going on?
Very different, very different. And I find the best security engineers that I generally work with in mobile come from a development background where they understand how to develop the applications. And the same with like pen testers as well. The best pen testers come with a development background because they understand how to architect, how to build the application, how to code and develop. They then understand how to break that. And those are the best people. But you have to be, it's like the technologies that we'll maybe talk about a little bit. You have to be born in the mobile space, i.e., your background has to be in mobile development for you to truly understand the kind of attacks that we see in the mobile space. It's very, very different, very different. And so today, when my work is generally with the teams that sit outside of like the CISO function, because you have the CISO who's responsible for enterprise security. When it comes to mobile applications, generally these mobile applications are deployed onto a device that's outside the enterprise.
Yeah.
So like a bank shouldn't have access to our device. The device is ours. We own that, of course. So then you have to work in this kind of isolated environment where mobile's treated differently within the enterprise. There's a different education process around it. It brings its own complexities.
It's kind of like, if you look at it, I did a podcast, might be going 6, 7, 8 months ago now with Lee Morton. We were talking about
Lee.
You know Lee?
Yeah, know Lee really well.
Yeah, well, we did a pod around the supply chain risks and how it's a common sort of infiltration into an organisation. That sounds very similar to what you're saying. Like why not people think about that? Going back to the COVID example, like since then we've all been logging on to our home networks, and we all do a lot of our work now off our phone as well.
Yeah.
It seems to me, if I was an attacker, why not just go? It seems like an easy route in.
Well, so we in the space that we operate in, we do a lot of analysis on the threats, the emerging threats, and we've seen a shift in how attackers now are targeting mobile users more so than the web application users. So a few years ago, or up until a few years ago, it was very common to see, your sort of social engineering and phishing-based attacks targeting desktop, laptop users and web applications. Now, bad actors are looking at targeting mobile users more so. So this is the thing that we need to now protect the applications and our customers from, i.e. the end user, you and I, as a consumer. So we're aware of it. The technology is adapting, but I can guarantee you the bad actors are also aware of it, and they're shifting their focus in the campaigns. As you talk about third-party risks, Lee and I were at an event beginning of this year actually, and he was talking about supply chain attacks.
Yeah.
Well, we start to talk about how does that impact mobile?
Yeah.
And you look at how organisations are developing mobile applications. I think 70%, generally over 70% of the code base of applications is from third parties. Okay. So you're integrating all of the same kind of challenges around managing supply and managing third-party solutions that are ultimately impacting your product. And then what you often find as well, and this is another challenge that we have to help organisations overcome, is these third-party solutions may be making callbacks. Yeah. So then you've got all the API calls as well. Not only the code itself is from a third party, but it's also interacting with lots of different third-party solutions. So you want to protect, you want visibility, and you want control. Yeah. So that's how it kind of impacts the supply. Type conversation.
Makes sense, yeah. And this explosion of AI, is this Is this helping your world? Is this meaning that there's more of a need for protection in the mobile application security game, or is it a double-edged sword?
It's certainly helping us. It's helping us. If you think about how many interactions you have on a mobile device on a daily basis, like it's embarrassing actually. Have you ever used the Apple report on how much
it's like screen time and what you
it's embarrassing when you have a look
like?
at what do I actually do with my life other than just stare at my phone. But you think about all these events and all these things that are going on the device. If you're collecting security events around that, it's really hard to be able to kind of sift through that data. So we use AI to be able to remove some of the false positives from the threat events that we gather, much like other kind of SIM solutions are doing and your SOC functions, but we do it for the mobile security events specifically. Okay. So from that perspective, it's helping us understand data better and get to these the source of truth faster. No doubt we're seeing AI used maliciously as well, so helping bad actors create malware faster, easier, more powerful malware. It's there's definitely pros and cons to it.
Yeah. I think that's whenever sort of AI is brought into these subtopics on this pod, it's always sort of like it's double-edged. It can go either way, and that's the exciting bit of it. Do you know what I mean? That's the exciting bit. So moving on a little bit then, in terms of obviously for this podcast, there's different sort of listeners to it. What sort of market are in need of mobile application security awareness, or a product or a partner? What sort of market? Because I'm guessing obviously like your high street retailers, maybe they don't, maybe they do because they're obviously the low hanging fruit that aren't aware of a security budget or anything like that. Who do you normally speak to try and educate about your line of work?
Yeah, so I'll take you on a bit of a journey. So the product that I first started working in this space on was developed for the defence systems to protect software assets on like surface-to-air missiles and things like this that may fall behind enemy lines, and then people try and revert, bad actors, non-friendly enemy state trying to reverse engineer the software. So that's where it started. Then it emerged into the mobile space, and of course, financial gain is generally the biggest motive for attackers. Yeah. And so logically then you start to speak with the banks about protecting the retail banking apps. Yeah. And this is like over the last kind of 10 years I've seen the market evolve, and then certainly in the last 5, from working almost exclusively in banking, we started to look at gaming. Well, gaming's a massive market. Yeah. we was working with one particular company, and they had 2 billion downloads of their game. Like it's the fastest growing title, and it's been going for over 10 years. And of course, I've lost my train of thought now.
No, to kind of
give me the question again. Sorry.
Well, I'll kind of just like make a comment on it, and we'll bring back to it around application security. Obviously, it links into others. So, like you were saying about banking, obviously, then you start to bring in identity, biometrics, yet another subsector. What you were saying about gaming, the amount of data that they hold, so data reuse, it all kind of links now. But identity has blown up because of the fact that we're doing a lot of this. We're not going into branches anymore. We're actually like trying to get in via a virtual platform. So it's kind of like AppSec is the birthing for identity, for secure data reuse in the gaming, in other sectors. That's just my comment on what you were saying.
Yeah, sorry, you asked the question around like what's the best market to talk to, and where we're working most. So historically, kind of defence, then banking, then we saw gaming as well, and with the emergence of like mobile games. So in-app purchases are like the amount of revenue generated from these mobile games is just phenomenal.
Well, you get them for free, and it's like, well, it's not free actually. Buy this and such and such.
And so people, of course, want to cheat. They want to get more credits in the games. They want to get higher on the leaderboard. Yeah. We've seen medical device manufacturers as well that the smart device will be connecting to a mobile application. People trying to reverse engineer near the applications and modify the data there. Yep. Automotive with the keyless entries. Yep. And now, of course, the platforms that we use in the vehicles are largely built on Android. So then that introduces new risks as well. For me, my view is anyone that's developing an application that either transacts financial information or personally identifiable information like healthcare, has high value intellectual property for the company. So if you're developing an app and your business services are delivered through that application, if a bad actor can reverse engineer that, copy it, modify it, launch it in another market in competition, there's all different types of reasons why they're doing that. You want to protect that, right?
Yeah.
So the application for mobile security is really wide. And interestingly, there are markets like retail actually that are still way behind where they need to be. We're doing some research at the moment, so we're taking a sample of over 400 applications, most popular applications across the world, and we're going to look at kind of what protection techniques that these organisations are using, and then we're going to try and go and educate them on how they can improve that. And it's of course we're not going to discuss names and who these organisations are, but there are leading brands within the UK market that you and I will be interacting with where there is nothing protecting the application from a bad actor being able to reverse engineer. Yeah, it is really, as a user of the applications, it is. And but this is an education. This is a what's the word? An evolution of education and understanding of mobile. It goes back to this comment around pre-pandemic. Lots of kind of your general services were consumed across multi-channel, whereas now it's a much higher proportion via the mobile application, and it's so fast, right? Digital transformation has happened so fast in the mobile space. So does that answer your question about that? It gives you some ideas on the markets as well. It's really interesting.
So obviously that's about the market. So talk to me about what you do on the day-to-day then, obviously, because I know that you're the VP of sales. So talk to me about what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I've got a team of 10 salespeople. Since joining the company Build 38, we've completely looked at like how they go to market, the messaging, working really closely with marketing, from like building out the outbound sequences and things like this. So the process underpinning how sales teams operate. To then the teams themselves and training and education and kind of looking at the market and profiling the right kind of organisations, making sure that we're feeding them with the right content to be able to share, and then it's the typical kind of implementation of MEDPIC and BANT in qualification. So your metrics, your economic buyer, your etc. I've been through force management training as well, so we've taken some of that and kind of implemented some of that within the processes around sales organisation. And then customer events. We were like, there's nothing better than getting out and speaking with customers, right? So I had some great meetings last week with government entities and banks within the UK. I get the benefit of travelling a lot with my role. We're an international sales organisation, primarily focused in EMEA. With offices out in Spain and Germany, so I travel a lot to go and see customers, and that's a great thing, right? Spending time and educating people and helping them improve their security posture around the mobile apps, really.
I know all about obviously travelling to meet clients. It's like when sometimes I don't have to do the nursery run on the day. I'm not saying that I don't always enjoy it, but the odd day even there where I don't have to listen to PJ Masks or Spider-Man on the way to nurseries.
Might have grown out of that now, but
I'm well and truly in it. So, but that's cool. So obviously we were talking before this, and we were just kind of getting into sort of mobile AppSec, just as a product, just as a space, and it seems that obviously you're very passionate about it, like you live and breathe it in the sense of like, why is the community missing a trick here? Because it sounds like I don't know how you even get some sleep at night, but with all the plates that you're juggling. So how come it's such a busy space, but we're having this podcast now trying to bring light on this subsector?
Yeah, it goes back to our original point. Sort of, it's an evolving market, and I read a great report recently. I forget the guy's name. He's based in the UK, and maybe I'll share the link afterwards as a resource if I can remember it. But it talks about the whole kind of mobile security ecosystem and like the best of breed solutions across these across the ecosystem, from like your early kind of earlier on in this shifting left in the secure development lifecycle. So like your early code scanning solutions, right through to application hardening solutions. That is the space that I currently operate in. And I just think it's a complex ecosystem. It's evolved very quickly, and there's still just a lot of education needed on what bad actors are actually doing to these applications. I think there's a lot of unknown out there. Whereas if you think about enterprise security, it's been around for such a long time. I remember working at NCC Group actually, and we always used to talk about information security. It was IT security, and then cyber started, kind of
being the main buzzword.
Yeah, exactly. But it was the emergence of like, okay, there's this stuff that we don't control anymore that we've got to try and get a handle on around security events and how organisations are being attacked, across email and web and their enterprise and the importance of IDS and IPS solutions and that sort of stuff. I think now CISOs are aware of all of that, but the mobile, as I said earlier, the mobile is still sat outside, generally in a different area of the business. And part of my role is also bridging the gap between like the CISO function and mobile to ensure that we're working closely and that they can benefit from the kind of security events that we see on the mobile. Because if I'm a bad actor, you're not just targeting one particular source of information or one particular platform, are you? If it's a persistent threat, you're targeting the entire enterprise and customers right across all of those channels, right across all that platform. So I think that's important, but that's also why it's quite complex.
Yeah, absolutely.
Space.
I've been trying to think whilst you've been speaking about how can we eradicate the problem of it's such a big problem because it's kind of like the ugly duckling. It's left on the outside of the family is mobile application security, and I might be very naive here, but what about if I know there's budget constraints with this, but would the issues be solved if everybody gets a work phone? Because then does it fall into the fact that it's not an individual property because it's would it be in a company property that the security can then go via CISO or not? It's
certainly easier. So when you're talking about securing the enterprise devices and the enterprise applications that go onto those devices, that's a less complex challenge to solve because you have control of the device. So you can put your MDM solution in place. You can control what applications can be installed onto the device. You can even put like an anti-malware solution on the device. The challenge is when you're pushing an application out to the Play Store or App Store and that's downloaded by someone on a device that you no longer have control over. So a consumer's device. That presents a whole different challenge around managing risk, and that's the area that we really operate in.
Okay.
Yeah. Having said that, though, it's interesting. I work with a retailer, and they were really concerned around the devices that they are issuing to employees within store, and so they wanted to protect the applications that go onto these devices because they've been seeing people trying to manipulate stock input and things like this. And then if you can get malware onto the device or control the device or control the application, then you're introducing internal risks within the enterprise. So there are use cases, but the primary focus is applications that are run on what we would call an untrusted environment, so a consumer's device.
No, it makes sense. And like you say, on a consumer's device, they'll get their applications from the App Store or Google Play, whatever it might be, and you think like, oh well, I'm going through these credible sources, but that's not the case, isn't it? A lot of applications that come via these are not vetted. And often the products are rushed out. Their security is an afterthought, and like you say earlier on in the podcast, it's all about if we can shift left that mentality of bringing security in at the front, it solves a lot of problems. But as we both know, that's an argument that's been going on since day one around DevSecOps methodology. Seems to be there, but no one seems to be gripping it, and it just seems to be.
Well, and also it's the platforms that we're installing these applications on as well. Like Google and Apple are the primary providers of these platforms. There is more that these operating system providers could do, and the manufacturers of the devices could do. But it comes with a trade-off of cost versus risk and benefit, and is it in their interest to invest in those particular areas? And the answer is today, no. Who knows what will happen in the future? The other challenge is that we're seeing a lot more of the generally cheaper Chinese handsets coming into circulation where they come pre-routed, which means that also introduces challenges around, when you're distributing an application, it's already into an untrusted environment or an insecure environment.
Yeah.
And so competition in the market across like providers. So Apple's now having to open up its store so you can download Apple apps from other sources rather than just the Apple App Store.
Yeah.
So of course, then if you're downloading an app, how do you know that it's coming from a secure source?
Yeah.
And outside of the UK, in regions where there's more Android users, this presents even more challenges. So Latin America, Asia Pacific, India, places like this where they are cheaper handsets, generally recycled handsets.
Yeah.
Really difficult for these organisations to create a secure way for their customers to engage with their services, because inherently the device is likely to be compromised or present a risk to the user and let's say the bank, whoever it is.
Absolutely.
So that's a very complicated
problem. Absolutely.
Problem to face.
Pretty much one of my final questions, Adam, is and it's hot off the press. So obviously, I don't know if this comes into your world or not, but obviously Google's acquisition of Wiz, I'm just thinking sort of like, does that affect the mobile application security world? Because obviously an all-in-one cloud platform, obviously getting acquired by Google, does that then transpire down into the application security world, or is it too early to tell? What's your sort of thoughts on that?
I don't know about Wiz. It's a really exciting acquisition, but certainly with I used to work at Mandiant, FireEye, back in 2015, I think, and so Mandiant's always been the leader in threat intelligence, right? And so Google acquired Mandiant, and I think that's an more interesting acquisition. Sorry, in the mobile space at least.
I wish I had ties.
Because all of that intelligence can really help Google improve the security of their platform. But it would then only work within that ecosystem. So I think generally what's needed in the mobile security space is more awareness of the challenges, more awareness of the risks, for the CISO function to take more note of the mobile space, because generally, as I said, it's perceived to be this. In many banks that I've worked with, you have the enterprise, you have the CISO function, and engineering internally within the enterprise, and then the mobile team. We call it channels, call it digital, is treated as a completely separate entity, and you need close collaboration within those spaces as well, which is work that we do.
Seems to be the underlying theme of this, like you say, it's separate entities that needs brought in, and maybe that's why it's not got the sort of knowledge and the limelight as much as other entities, which leads back to the title of why it is a niche within a niche, and I think that brings us pretty much nicely to put a tie on this. Adam, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast, mate. If anybody's got any questions for Adam, I'll be sure to put all his information down below. But once again, mate, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, brilliant. Cheers. Nice one.